Hey guys, recently Blender has announced that they are working on Cycles X, which is a very exciting new render engine inside of Blender. Today we're going to be talking about some of my thoughts on the future of Blender along with some visual effects inside of Blender. Now before we get started, I just want to say a big congrats to the COD Genius for winning this month's Community Render Challenge. His render is up on the screen now, and also thank you to everybody else who participated. This has been a really fun challenge. Anyways, getting into the meat of this episode, we have Cycles X right here. Okay, so this is basically a new version of Cycles that they are currently working on. It's basically just trying to revamp some of the render capabilities and everything and make it a little bit faster, trying to compete with some other render engines that people use such as Octane or Arnold or other stuff like that. Cycles has always been the best free render engine that we have used. However, it's not been the fastest compared to other render engines that's out there. It's always been slightly slower than the other ones, but they are hopefully trying to change that. Now they actually have a post right here that we can scroll through and everything. I'll link it down in the description below. I highly recommend you read it. This basically just shows you some of the information that you'll need to know about Cycles X and everything. But Cycles X is actually out now as a experimental build. So to access that, we're just going to come to the main blender.org right here. And to actually access that, we can go ahead and hit download right here. And then when we want to come down here, there's this Go Experimental. So we just want to click that. And then right here we have the experimental branches. You can just come here, and then right at the bottom here we have the Blender 3.0.0 Cycles X branch. So you just want to click on that and that'll automatically download it up here. Okay, so that will download the zip file and then you can open up Cycles X from there. Now today we're going to be looking at some demo files. So right here are some of the demo files I'm going to be using. We can scroll down, we have the Cycles files. So I'm just going to be using these first two to kind of demonstrate some of the properties of Cycles X. Okay, so here we are in the 3.0.0 alpha. You can see this is the Cycles X version. So we can just pop on out of here. Now you won't notice that nothing too much has changed. Even if you come over here to the render engine, it doesn't say Cycles X. It still says Cycles, but trust me, it is still Cycles X. So let's just go ahead and open up one of those demo files real quick. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up our Lone Monk Cycles. So let's just see this scene kind of before. We can kind of come out here and see that this is the whole scene, and here it is from the camera view and looking pretty cool and everything. Now one thing that has actually changed with Cycles X is that we no longer have a tile size down here. Now if you watch my other tutorials, you'll know to decrease render times, I usually come to the render properties, come down to performance, and there'll be a tile section here. That way we can actually maximize our GPU usage and all that stuff. But you'll see that's no longer there. And that's actually one of the biggest things that Cycles X has done. Instead of rendering out in tile sizes like before, let's just go ahead and render out this image. You will now notice that the whole screen is now being rendered at the same time and everything. And that actually just speeds up everything a lot. This is actually how most other render engines actually render. Some are a little bit weird depending on what program you're using and everything. However, you can see up here that we have a sample count. It's basically rendering the whole image, but it's using this sample for the whole image and stuff. And so that way it can just speed up the render times. To show you what it was before, we are on 2.92. Let's just open up that same file. And now let's go ahead and render out an image just so I can show you what I mean by that. Okay, so we can see here that Blender is basically selecting some tiles to render out each individual tile and everything. And once that tile is done, it'll move on to the next and the next and the next. Until it's done, you can see that it's rendered one of 12 tiles up here. And so that is what the old version of Cycles is doing. It's basically taking each chunk out of the image and rendering that individual chunk and then moving on. So that just kind of slows down the process and everything, and that's one of the things that Cycles X has improved on. Now because of this, Cycles X is actually way faster at rendering out certain scenes inside of Blender. I'm going to render out this monk scene in both Cycles X and the previous version of Cycles, and we can see and compare the render times and the quality. So that is up on the screen now. You will see that both of the images look the exact same, and that's actually because Blender's not really doing it any differently. It's still looking the exact same and everything. However, the render times are way less on Cycles X. We can see that it's almost about 4 times as fast, which is just crazy how much faster that is. And just so you know, we are rendering a 512 sample count, and here are all my settings real quick if you just want to kind of view those. I didn't try to touch them as much from the demo settings. I changed around a few things just to kind of speed up the render time and everything. But this is about it. We can see that there's a massive improvement in everything, so it's just really, really nice. Okay, so the next thing that Cycles X actually improves on is the actual viewport shading and everything. So if we go into the rendered view, this is in Cycles X. Okay, you will notice that we have a lot faster actual preview time than regular Cycles, and that's actually to do with some of the denoising and everything. Now, it might be a little bit slower for you, however, when it actually denoises and everything, it's more like the actual render, and it does it faster. If I was to do this on the old version of Cycles, it would take forever to get this level of quality. So let's just zoom in real quick to this little thing in the center, and let's just see how long it takes to get really good quality. And you can already see that we can see some of the woodwork right here, and if we look at the grass over here, let's just kind of come over here and look at the grass. You can see that a lot of detail pops in very fast, whereas on the previous version, it wouldn't be as fast. Now, if denoising is not your thing, let's just change that off. You'll still get really good results, and you can see how fast this is. I have a mid-range card, only a RTX 2060, yet I'm getting this fast results inside of Path Tracing Engine. This is just really nice. It's almost as fast as Eevee when it comes to previewing your scene and everything. I am on a 32 sample count, so maybe if you have a higher GPU, you can bump that up a little bit in your viewport, but you can just see how fast that is. If we just kind of go around the scene, and you can get really accurate results to what your final render is going to be like super fast. We can also see, if we come down here to the denoising tab, you can turn on optics if you have a card that's capable of that, and that even just speeds it up a lot faster and everything. So that's just really nice. It's so fast now that really you can do a lot of previewing in your viewport now that you couldn't really do before. Okay, so now let's just hop over to another scene to compare that as well. So come up here. I'm just going to open up the other demo that I downloaded off of the blender.org website. Okay, so this is supposed to be a little monster under a bed and everything. So let's just pop over to render view real quick. Okay, so here is the scene. It's looking pretty nice and everything, and you can just see again how freaking fast it is. Before it would lag so much, and you can't really tell that fast what your render is going to be like. But just moving around here, you can just see how fast it is, and that's not even with denoising on. So let's turn viewport denoising on. So viewport, I'm just going to select optics down here, and like that, you can see how much of a difference that has made, and it's just so fast and everything. Now these are all the settings I'm using. I'm rendering on the default sample count that it came with this project, so 1024. So let's just go ahead and render this out both on Cycles X and the previous version of Cycles and just see the difference. Okay guys, up on the screen right now are the comparison, and holy cow, this is a lot of difference. You can already tell that Cycles X is going to be a game changer inside of Blender just from this little comparison right here. Without Cycles X, you can see that it's rendered in about 9 minutes or so, and that's just for one frame. If you're doing an animation or whatever, you'd have to do that for every single frame. Now this is a crazy sample count, so this is kind of just an extreme example. However, if we do the same sample count and everything on Cycles X, you'll see that the time drops to 1 minute and 33 seconds. That is just insane. And you can see the images don't really look any different from each other or anything. That's just purely the optimization that the Blender team has done for Cycles X to get results like this. Now again, I did not mess around with any settings for this project. I try to make it as streamlined and fair as possible for both of the render engines and everything. But this is just night and day a difference that really you can't get with any other render engine. Now a lot of features still aren't supported for Cycles X. Right now it's still in development, so the team is working very hard to try to implement all the features that normal Cycles has into this new version. But it's just really exciting to be a Blender user right now, especially if you have low-end hardware but you still want to make realistic renders and everything. Okay, so like I was saying before, Cycles X doesn't support all the features of Blender yet. Now for visual effects specifically, since we are a visual effects focused channel, I can show you some of the features that kind of aren't there yet that we can't really use for visual effects. So let's go hop into a new scene. Okay, so this is one of my recent VFX shots. If you want the tutorial for that, it's in the description below. But on screen is what it should look like. Here's the final result that I rendered out and everything. So we can see that we have this ship and everything, and it should be on the ground, basically casting a shadow and everything. Okay, so this is the previous version of Cycles, so in the latest official release in 2.92. we can see that this is basically what it should look like. We should see that I have some lighting set up in the scene. I have an HDRI, all that stuff. And then I have the shadow catcher plane down here. So this is what this plane is. Basically just catches the shadow and renders everything else as transparent. So this is what it should look like and everything. That's how I get the effect of the plane actually going on top of the footage and everything. However, if we now move into Cycles X, we can see that we have this issue. This plane really isn't being the shadow catcher object that it was before. And that's actually because Cycles X does not support shadow catching yet. I believe they will work on it, but since this is just an experimental feature right now, it's not in there yet. But if I actually select it and come over here to the object properties, then go into the visibility, we can see that the mask is still the shadow catcher object and everything, but it's still just not showing up as it should. So this is just one of the features that isn't in Cycles X, and this is really a big one for visual effects since we use this all the time to kind of blend in the footage and the CGI. And for this reason, right now, Cycles X really isn't a good tool for visual effects artists inside of Blender. Now in the future, I have a lot of hope that they will add this feature into it, but right now, as at the moment, I'm not really going to be switching over to Cycles X just because of this. Now there are a lot of other features that Cycles X just doesn't have. I know it's not that great with volumetrics yet, but again, it is experimental, so they are working on making it happen and everything. Now I have everything I use in today's video down in the description below for you guys to test out yourself. I highly recommend you guys try it out yourself just to see how powerful Cycles X can be and all the potential it has for the future. But anyways guys, thank you guys so much for watching. We have a Patreon and Discord. Links to those are in the description below. But anyways guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.